news for now. It's over to Evan to start our conversation of the day. But before we get there, let's talk more about Brexit. Morning, Evan.
Yeah, Elvis, the fallout continues. It seems there's a little bit of buyer's remorse, as one could call it, in the United Kingdom, and I think on the continent itself, there's a totally different view. I think a little bit of anger continues to simmer on the continent. But let's cross over to Brussels, where our correspondent there, Kevin Ozebek, is standing by. Very good morning to you, Kevin. It's Evan Jansen talking to you from Johannesburg. Yeah, just give us a quick overview after yesterday's meeting. What's the latest?
Well, good morning from Brussels, Eben. Well, the latest is day 2 of this summit is about to begin. And what's so significant about day 2 of this summit is that UK Prime Minister David Cameron is not invited. This is the first major EU meeting since the referendum results came out last week that the UK will not have representation at a EU meeting. So huge developments there. And we do expect the EU leaders during this morning's session to begin the foundation of what they want the EU to look like going forward, what they want the EU to look like without the UK. Based on what we've been hearing EU leaders say, it appears that their strategy moving forward will be to really help make sure that the 27 remaining members of the EU, that they're allowed to keep their national identities alive. And it sounds like they may start to abandon this EU phrase, an ever closer union. So moving towards more national identities, more power within the individual countries, and less of this European identity.
Now, we understand, of course, that it'll be a 2-year process, this exit that we're talking about. Does this mean that this process could be dealt with even a little bit faster if Cameron is not even at the first meeting?
No, because as of right now, what's known as Article 50 of the Lisbon Treaty still has not been enacted by the UK. This Article 50 is EU legislation that has to be enacted by a member country if it wants to leave. That Article 50 is the official notification of the EU of that country's intent to leave the Union. Prime Minister Cameron has made it very clear that he will not enact Article 50. He thinks that's the role of his successor. And we do know it will at least be a few months likely until a new UK Prime Minister is named. On Tuesday, at day 1 of this EU summit, during an emergency meeting of the European Parliament, MEPs voted on a resolution that basically said we want the UK to enact this Article 50 sooner rather than later. In the eyes of the EU, they want to get negotiations moving to end all the uncertainty that's out there that's been really making markets dip in the past few days. But again, we're going to have to wait at least a few months, according to the Prime Minister, for Article 50 to be enacted and for these official exit talks to get underway.
There's talk, or we're hearing talk of Scotland talking about a possibility of them vetoing Brexit. Is this at all possible? And also, what do you think the future holds for Scotland and Northern Ireland?
Well, there's some differing opinions there in terms of what Scotland can do. The Scottish Parliament may make a decision, may make a resolution that essentially tells England that, hey, we voted to remain in the EU. We're going to try to block you enacting Article 50. But some other scholars say, well, Westminster could just overturn all of that. We did hear from Scottish MEPs yesterday during this emergency session, and these MEPs said, hey, EU, we are with you. We voted to stay with you. Please don't abandon us because we don't want to abandon you. Later today here in Brussels, Nicola Sturgeon, Scotland's first Premier, will be here. She'll be meeting with EU leaders. We'll have to wait and see what those talks produce. But definitely, from what Scottish politicians have been saying, they want to put up a fight. They want to stay. They've even been alluding to the fact that they're willing to leave the UK in order to maintain EU's membership. So as of right now, all of this is up in the air. Also up in the air right now, the future of the UK, given what we've been hearing coming out of Scotland.
Kevin, in conclusion, just run us over the mood on the continent right now in countries like France and countries like Germany. What are the people on the ground? What's the sentiment they're having towards the EU first and then also towards Britain, one would think?
Well, of course, in the past months, in the past years, we've seen what's known as Euroscepticism rise all across this continent. That's just the catchy buzz term for anti-EU sentiment. We do know in countries like France, Austria, and the Netherlands, there's particularly high Euroscepticism in those countries. But political analysts I've been speaking to say that it appears the implications, especially the economic implications for the UK, could be so great in the coming weeks and coming months and coming years that in itself may quell some of that Euroscepticism. So these political analysts say they don't expect any other countries to call for a referendum if they want to stay or go until it's fully understood what is going to happen to the UK and how its economy will be impacted. Moving or go in the lead up to this referendum, it was pretty widely thought that the EU needs the UK more than the UK needs the EU. But it's looking like that may not be the case. Last night, during day one of this summit, when all of the EU leaders were meeting, Donald Tusk, president of the European Council, even said that it appears that the implications, at least the immediate ones for the EU since the referendum results came out, are not that great. So it's possible that given what we're seeing, given that there's the potential breakup of the UK, given that businesses have already been threatening to leave London, given that the economic future of the UK looks a little bit darker now than it did before, it's possible that could quell the Euroscepticism and not make these countries want to leave the EU.
Kevin, thank you very much for giving us that quick overview. That, of course, coming to you live from Brussels this morning. That's our correspondent on the continent, Kevin Ozebek, giving us an update following, of course, that meeting there yesterday. But Elvis will tell you shortly that we're feeling the reverberations back home as well.